Everybody out here doing it, but we the ones who late. Now family, we the ones who gotta delegate. Get that money in the power, never be fake. Stick to cosign for 3. What did he say? Create jobs, support our own. Educate the same and buy back your home. Got 3 degrees, triple 10. 3 PhDs, now we on the CNN. DBTV, let's talk about negligence. Ignorance is bliss, but we can turn it to intelligence. Believe none of what you hear, half of what you see. Let's break it down here on Dr. Boy's TV. Here we are.
Well, how you guys? Hey, good to see you. Good to see everybody. I hope you guys can hear me and see me okay. I want to say welcome to Black Movie Night. Black Movie Night is where we get together and we create our own Black Hollywood. And we are doing the damn thing. And I see Roosevelt's here. Christine Diggs says hello to all panelists. I see Tiara KJ Williams is here.
Hey! Sorry.
Everybody's here on time. How y'all doing today? Uh-oh. Wait, say it again?
Good. How are you?
Oh, doing good, doing good.
I said I'm good. How are you?
And they try to say black women are loud.
I know. I just walked in this. I'm sorry. Hey, everybody. Hey, everybody.
Oh, that's all right. That's all right. I didn't know if you knew that we were live. I should have told you that. That's just, I like to surprise you. I want everybody to know, if you're watching, just so y'all know, the Zoom room holds 1,000 people, and that's the capacity. But we had 5,800 people register, so a lot of people won't be able to get in. But what we're going to do is we're going to live stream out to drboystv.com so that everybody can watch it there. And so I'm going to send out a note. I'm going to let everybody, let my guests kind of talk for a minute, and I'm going to send out a little note to everybody that's coming, let them know what's going down. And next time we'll just get a bigger Zoom. If you're watching on Instagram and you want to come in, you can go to blackmovienight.net. That's blackmovienight.net. Start the movie very, very soon. So you guys are on my phone right now, so that's why you see my shoulder. But anyway, let me just start off by, first of all, welcoming everybody. And I see my brother, Roosevelt Mitchell. Roosevelt Mitchell and Associates is up in the corner.
You like that?
How you been, brother?
I've been all right, man. I'm trying to get my volume right. I can barely hear you.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. Well,
I can hear Tiara loud and clear, though.
Okay. Well, yeah. Well, everybody heard Tiara.
Hey, Roosevelt.
Speaking of Tiara, there's Tiara KJ Williams. She's AKA Miss Black Hollywood. She's out of Hollywood, and you're living in Texas right now, right? Is that right? Dallas?
Right. I'm back and forth between Dallas and Los Angeles. Yes.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
And also Amani Walker's in here, and now she looks like the letter A. Her video went out for a second, but there she is.
I'm trying to get my camera together.
Well, good to see you, Amani. Good to see you, sister. So the reason that I brought together the panelists that I have, first of all, let's do a mic check. If you can see me and hear me, can everybody see and hear okay? Let us know if you can see and hear. All the panelists too. Can you guys hear me and see me okay? You coming through okay?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. All right. And what I'm about to do is I'm gonna open up the live stream so that the folks in the that are outside of the room can actually check it out in the overflow room. Just so you guys know, Black Movie Night, if you don't know the origin, Black Movie Night was created because we're not really into just complaining about what other people are doing to us. We were actually into solving problems. So one of the things that we figured out was, we said, wait a minute, on social media and through the internet, we're able to reach about 1 million Black people a week. So I said, instead of us always complaining about, the movies that Hollywood's putting out and the false portrayals and everything else, why don't we just build something better? And so Black Movie Night came out of that. So we have our own film projects that we make as a crew, and we'll get to that in a second. But also, there are thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of Black filmmakers, directors, producers, writers, editors, all these Black people that are rejected by mainstream Hollywood. They're rejected by, that white Jewish Hollywood out west. So why have our people begging? Like, we ain't supposed to be begging. We're the greatest people in the history of all mankind. So I hope you all agree with me, and I hope that's why. I hope we can connect on that idea. So let's first of all start, since we're talking about entertainment. Tiara, give me your thoughts on that in terms of, what the struggle is even like for a lot of Black folks that are making films and and doing the damn thing. Like how it seems like it's tough to get opportunities out there.
It is. It's tough. Well, I'll say this. Anybody who's willing to put in the time and the work to do anything, obviously can get into the business, but it's about waiting. Like you have to wait, you got to meet the right people. It's like this process, right? When I first moved to LA, they told me that it would take me 10 years to make it, right? That's like the standard. You got to meet everybody. You got to go to everybody's office. You got to beg for opportunities or whatever. And at some point I just decided that I wanted to create my own opportunities. And, it's been lit ever since. And so I can do both, but it is still a process. I've been in LA for about 14 years now.
Yeah, you've done a lot of stuff, and you've worked on a lot of big productions and with big networks, CBS and stuff like that. And I know you created the Real Network, and you've done really a lot of things. And I want to, and we're gonna have a good night to talk about everything everybody's doing. So if I miss something in the beginning, we'll make sure we cover it. So let me go to Roosevelt. So Roosevelt, you actually created a whole curriculum called Raising a Black Scholar, and you were actually the inspiration behind this project. And Tiara was the director, and you were the guy that, I don't remember exactly how the conversations happened, but it seemed to me that you came to me and said, we should consider this for a film project or something like that. And I do know that if it wasn't for you, that this project wouldn't even exist. So can you kind of speak on that in terms of why you feel like a film like this and a project like this, should be done?
Well, to piggyback off Tiara, I had the idea of doing it because after being inside of or dedicating my entire teaching career to educating in high poverty Black neighborhoods and urban schools, I see all these different things, and I talk to all these different parents about the issues they're having, and I see it so much everywhere that I go. So once I decided to try to make a film and threw together the trailer, I remember showing it to you and saying, man, I need to try to raise money or meet somebody so I can make this happen. He was like, nah, man, we can do it ourselves. Mm-hmm. And, and I'm glad I reached out to you. And I'm glad, you had that mindset because, again, I didn't know anything about directing a film or nothing like that. All I know is I'm an expert at education and meeting parents and stuff like that. So it was you who put the dream team together. So, for us to get to this point, I was just happy to actually be in this space and here, for us to have this conversation because these are issues and different options that Black people need to understand that we all have.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna say this. You said you didn't know anything about making a film and stuff like that. Well, I'm gonna tell you the secret. I didn't know either. I didn't know nothing. I just know that Black people can do anything. So I was operating on faith. And I think that that's important for us as people because we'd be surprised at what we can accomplish when we just put our mind to it. And I think a lot of times, things don't become reality because we're just afraid to try. So Amani, I invited Amani. Amani's on our team, actually. She's part of Voice Watkins Enterprises and does a really good job. And we were talking about the film in a meeting. And Amani mentioned to me that she actually homeschools her kids. And I said, I'd really like to have you here because I'd like for you to maybe talk about your experience, as a homeschooling mom, why you did it. And we're still gonna show the film and everything, but maybe maybe if you could give us like a brief summary of like why you even chose to do something different from what a lot of parents do. Instead of dropping your kids off at the local school, you actually keep your kids at home and educate them on your own. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, I've been homeschooling for over 10 years. My oldest is 15 now. And that was a discussion that me and their father had. So their father was homeschooled. And that's kind of what brought me into the homeschool idea. And when I came out of school, because I had children young, so when I came out of high school and went into college, I didn't like how the education system was going then. And so that's why I decided to homeschool my children. So they've always been homeschooled. They've never been to daycare. And I always wanted to teach them how to be entrepreneurs, how to be owners. We love traveling, so they're able to travel. So that's some of the reasons why I decided to homeschool.
Okay. So you know, I think that that, you know, it's funny, as we were kind of thinking about what we were going to discuss tonight. I remember just thinking, okay, yeah, we should just screen this movie, you know, so that everybody can have a chance to see it. And because Tierra did a great job with it, and her team did, everybody did a great job. And I know you're in the film, and Noma Lango Mushali Moses, who's also in the film, she's going to join us a little bit later on tonight. She's all the way in Botswana, so her time schedule is a lot different from ours. But then I thought about it, and I realized the situation that we're in, right? We're in this crazy Corona world, and a lot of parents are at home right now with their kids. And, you know, and so, you know, what I thought was that maybe I could, you know, talk to parents and kind of throw out the idea of just saying, like, I'm not here to tell you what to do, you know, to take your child out of school or not take them out. I'm just here to do a couple of things. I think that what we can do is, number one, remind you that you have a choice. Like, you're never in a place where you don't have a choice. And then two, give you the courage to pursue whatever choice you choose, you believe is best for you and your child. I think a lot of times it's confidence that stops us from pursuing the things that we know we need to do, right? So I'm a believer in protecting our children no matter what the cost, and sometimes that means protecting them from these school systems. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and start the film, and you guys can watch the film with us, and after we're done, we'll have a conversation and a discussion. Everybody who's watching, I want you guys to know I tried to live stream. I cannot live stream this for some reason. I think because Zoom, I don't know if y'all know, but Zoom literally went from having, when all this happened, Zoom went from having 10 million users to 200 million. And
Wow.
so, yeah, so we're on Zoom right now, and I tried to live stream it, and literally the live stream just said, sorry, I can't do it. So we're not going to, so the 1,000 people that are in the room are in, and I know 6,000 people register. Usually if 6,000 people register, about 2,000 people will actually show up. So what I'll do is end up sending a link to the recording out to everybody who can't make it. And I'm gonna still keep trying to get it onto drboystv.com so you guys can watch it. So anyway, all right, and so I want to ask everybody in here, if you could, on social media, use the hashtag Black Movie Night to lead a conversation about what's going on tonight. We're not just here to watch a movie and to build an industry and change the world. We're also here to learn about our children and how to take care of them. If you're on Instagram, you can go to blackmovienight.net and register and try to get into the room. The room's filled to capacity though, so I'm gonna try to even see if I can expand it or something like that. But we're completely sold out. So even though it was free, but we're sold out, if that means anything. So all right, so thank you all for talking to me for a minute. And what I'm gonna do is go ahead and start the film, and then we're gonna have another conversation afterwards. Sound good?
Okay.
Yes.
All right, beautiful Black people. Let's get it popping here. Let's see what we can make it do what it do. All right. So here I am. I'm going to share my screen, and there we go. Okay, screen is shared, and we're gonna make this happen.
Be it enacted that any free person who shall teach any slave within the state to read or write
be fined not less than $100 or imprisoned, and if a free person of color shall be fined, imprisoned, or whipped
at the discretion of the court, not exceeding 39 lashes nor less than 20 lashes.
Be it further enacted that if any slave shall hereafter teach,
they shall be sentenced to receive 39 lashes on his or her bare back.
There are so many issues in the public education system. I don't think we have enough time in this documentary to cover them all.
Sir, do you think the college students will show up? If I got anything to do with it, they won't show up.
We're white people. Everything we could to maintain segregation by trying to provide the Negro students with good, equal, but separate facilities.
As long as the system that we are in exists, the survival of the system depends upon the continued degrading of the black man in this country.
Using us as the whipping boy and the alibi and the excuse.
As long as this system exists, you will find that our people will have the same attitude towards education.
The burden rests upon the leaders of the Afro-American community to try and instill within the youth
the desire to further their education, because without it, you're not going anywhere on this earth today.
A failing school system affects our democracy from the beginning.
So I think a very important thing for us as a people to do is to recognize that this is not a democracy.
It's all about how much should you invest in your education and what you ultimately get in return for education.
You know, education is extremely important because there aren't too many people with PhDs locked up in prison. That seems to go and settle it.
It's a dynamic problem, so there's not going to be a simple solution. The solutions are going to be complex. One way is homeschooling. How important has education been in your life?
Education has been the cornerstone for my success, unequivocally.
Much of what I say I do right now is as a result of pursuing my education, having my family pressure me to continue my education, and by graduating Howard University undergrad and law school, and also getting continuing education.
I'm a first-generation college graduate, first person in my family to also receive a master's, first to also pledge in a fraternity. So being that I didn't really have anyone else in my life that graduated from college, it was extremely important so I could show future generations in my family that it's highly critical to make sure that you graduate from college.
My parents always inculcated into all of us children and my entire family how important education was. And it was a very tenuous relationship with education because by the time that I came to this country, I was already in 8th grade. And so when I got to high school, they were like, what's an 11-year-old doing here?
I was born and raised in Botswana. And that is, for those that don't know, a small country of only 2 million people in Southern Africa. I had the good fortune to go to private schools because my parents were very invested in my education.
I am the daughter of 2 educators. My father, university administrator, my mother, public school art teacher. And they always made education very, very important to me. And so I pursued education ferociously in my life and made it important in my children's lives.
We made it very clear to our oldest children, as we do to our youngest children, our youngest child, how important education is. And the way we did that was by example. My wife and I, we put ourselves through college.
So I had a chance to experience both the parochial side of education as well as the public school side of education. And I can honestly say that it was overwhelmingly positive. And I think a part of that is because I have phenomenal teachers who were truly vested in my success, not just as a student, but as a human being.
Malcolm X talked about when he was in elementary school, how he told his teacher that he wanted to be a lawyer, and the white woman responded and said, you could never be a lawyer. Your people won't support you, and our people would never hire you as a lawyer. You're better off getting a job doing something tangible with your hands, I believe she said.
My current position and role inside of the community would be a vocal activist, a person who is 110% about education, environment, enhancement, the Black community, Black empowerment, Black economics, all those things that's for the betterment of our community. My role is basically trying to get us to where we need to be, especially young women.
It has opened so many doors for me. It's given me opportunities to expand my horizon, my territory, to travel, to interface with other people, to be a blessing to other people. And I know that that wouldn't have happened if I had not pursued an education.
I have 3 different degrees, so I respect education and I respect that we can get formally educated. But I think it's also just as important to focus on using what you have and understanding that you're building a human being that's going into society. And it's not a textbook, it's life. And they can learn life from other people who've lived life longer than them.
For me, the conversation about education became very real because it wasn't just about going to class and taking exams. It was about speaking up for my own capacity, which was a great lesson to learn when you're barely 10 or 11.
Actively seeking out knowledge on my own in my personal life has been very important to my growth and development.
And without my education, I cannot say that I will be in the financial position I am in today.
We've been taught that education is one of the most important things in our community. However, we're not learning how to apply the education for the betterment of our community.
I was raised predominantly by my grandmother, my grandfather, and my father. All 3 did not even have a high school diploma. My father dropped out in high school. My grandmother dropped out in the 6th grade. My grandfather dropped out in the 3rd grade and was illiterate. But he had to take care of the family, as he and my grandmother had 16 children. So he was a breadwinner. So for me, education has changed the trajectory of my life.
The system has become too focused on tests to the point where learning is no longer valued. And now the value that's been placed on children is how high they can score so that their teacher can get a pat on the back and the school can get a pat on the back.
Standardized test scores opposed to actually, teaching the students valuable information that will help them with their lives as well as retaining information. It's one thing to get information to take a test, to pass a test. It's another thing to actually retain information, and there's a science behind that.
From Detroit to Atlanta, the standardized testing, they want teachers to be responsible for children and standardized testing when these children don't live standardized lives.
Because sometimes we'll look at scores and we'll say, oh, that student's not capable, right? It's supposed to measure aptitude. Does it really? Especially when we recognize that oftentimes those tests are culturally biased.
Those students that are having problems K through 4, when they hit the 4th grade, take that test, fail the test, those children, many of them are now categorized as, either being deficient for whatever reasons in the classroom, and now they're being excluded sometimes from the body of classes that are moving forward.
My name is Cherie Johnson, and I am a single mother of 2 children, a 16-year-old son named Jalen, who goes to public school, and a 10-year-old daughter, London, who I homeschool. The education in my home actually is pretty structured. London is homeschooled, so she runs a pretty tight program under myself, and my 16-year-old Jalen, he does go to public school. My son, I didn't pull him out and homeschool him, though, until the 7th grade, and that didn't last very long for him. London was actually 1st grade when I started homeschooling her. My son was on the higher end of standardized testing. He tested with no problem. And London, on the other hand, she's a test taker, but I think standardized testing, sometimes confuses children, and I think it confuses her. She can have straight A's and pass all her tests with flying colors. Now, to take the standardized tests, those scores to me don't reflect her academic ability.
My SAT scores indicated that I should have flunked out of college after my first semester, right? So they're supposed to predict someone's success. Not only did I not flunk out, I went from a bachelor's to a master's to a PhD before I was 29 years old, from a tier 1 university.
In the Dominican Republic, the way that the school system is set up, you would take exams for all these subjects that you're taking. And if you got a 95 or above, you had the option of spending the second half of that year in the following grade.
Actually, I had a mentee that was in public school, and when I met him, he was in the 6th grade and could not multiply. This was very alarming to me because that let me know that the school system had passed him along, and I'm pretty sure that they knew he could not multiply, but since he had some behavioral issues in school, their focus was not on making sure that he was educated, more so just getting him out of their class.
It's inexcusable that a child can go through a K through 12 education system that's funded by taxpayers, and there's not a level of accountability for that child having the basic skills that will enable him or her to have a life beyond high school. I see them as being a tool or mechanism to basically disempower our children.
Education's purpose is to replace an empty mind with an open one. Malcolm Forbes.
What you're basically doing is taking kids and putting them into a camp to prepare them to go and work for somebody else in a corporation. You're teaching them that they have to just do what they're told and do whatever is best for the company or for somebody else, but not for them, not for their family, not for building wealth, and not for building legacy.
They can't teach out of the 4 boxes of what they've been given, and even inside of the boxes of what we've been given is very hard for them to achieve.
We look down on socialism, but in a socialist community, everyone is basically guaranteed the same level of health care, the same level of education. We can say what we want about Cuba, but Cuba has a very low illiteracy rate.
And now you have institutions that are run like businesses, where students are seen as commodities. There's money that follows a child, and so I think what's happened is that you have people who are now inclined to be vested in education, not because they care about the well-being of children, but because there's a bottom line, and they're able to profit off of that. And I think, unfortunately, we see it more frequently in urban epicenters than we do in other areas.
The sad thing is, a lot of our students aren't even aware of the circumstances that they're being put into. And that's why education right now is very financial related.
The Department of Education has made it very clear. The 1964 Civil Rights Act has several different mechanisms attached to it.
No person in the U.S. shall, on the ground of race, color, or national origin, be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any program of activity receiving federal financial assistance.
Title VI deals with any grants that are being distributed to any entity that receives federal money, our taxpayer money. Those entities have to make sure that they are no longer discriminatory.
Because of Title II and Title VI funding, they get more money for removing children out of the classroom for special ed or other needs versus leaving them in the traditional classroom, which is often why some of your children are being labeled special ed just to get them out of the classroom.
In the wealthier districts, they have better facilities, better teachers, and better programs and resources to give children an upper hand on life in regards to college preparation, as well as some trade programs that they want to pursue in life.
But those that are in marginal neighborhoods or neighborhoods that are more in need, they're mainly just maintaining and monitoring the youth as a main job. It's just trying to survive every day, you know.
The mediocre teacher tells, the good teacher explains, the superior teacher demonstrates, the great teacher inspires. William A. Ward.
So please get your mask and step out there.
We have teachers who are afraid of their students. We have teachers who are afraid of parents. And rather than getting that child the resources that are necessary, instead of bringing in the infrastructures and the safety nets to position that child to be successful, you have individuals who pass, they say, well, it's this person's fault, this person's fault. So you have a lot of scapegoating, when in reality, we all are responsible for that. No child should graduate from high school without a fundamental understanding of the importance of literacy. No child.
Not everybody learns from a book, and not everybody learns by hearing or seeing somebody lecturing. And we have to take into account that not only do human beings learn differently, but we also demonstrate our learning differently. And if we do not honor those differences, and if we do not know how to harness those differences, then school systems will continue to fail, and we will continue to have less than excellent citizens when they become adults and productive members of society.
My son Jalen, he is 16 and he reads 12th grade, probably first year college level in London. She is 10 years old and she reads about a 7th, 8th grade level right now. I think homeschool has affected her reading level in a positive way, because she gets to read at her own pace. When she's done with the level she's on, she's able to excel and move to the next level and continue to move forward. She's not held back at all in the homeschool system.
Is it even possible? I have to ask myself, is it possible for a student to become successful in a public school system? Because that means that students are going by the rules of a system that was not created for that betterment in mind.
Because you have some young people, because their school systems are flawed, because they don't have the same resources, that child may have a 4.0, this other child may have a 4.0, but those 4.0s aren't equal. So when it's time to apply for colleges and for scholarships, you're going to have some young people who are going to be able to matriculate and go on to a 4-year university, whereas others may have to spend a year or two at a community college. So when we think about meritocracy and we think about the idea that technically if we all work and we put in the effort, we should have equal access to the same rewards and results. But that's not the case.
I decided to homeschool my children. I realized that there's more opportunity in homeschool versus the public school. And homeschool, they're not just a number.
My name is London Davis and I'm 10 years old. What I like about homeschooling is I get to wake up at my own pace. I get to do my work. I don't have a time limit. And I don't have to get up as early as most kids. They get up really early and I can do however much work I want.
Every student can learn, just not on the same day or the same way. George Evans.
My name is LaShawn Size. My husband, Harley Size, my 6-year-old daughter, Madison Size, her 3-year-old brother, Caleb Size. from Long Beach, California, and I'm a stay-at-home mother, and I also do hair at home. I work from home as well. So my children are educated at home. I homeschool both my 6-year-old and my 3-year-old child. My 6-year-old was formerly in traditional education. She did preschool, pre-K and beginning kindergarten in a regular school. For multiple reasons, we've decided to educate her at home. First being that, in my opinion, she was more advanced in the curriculum that they were teaching, and each request I made for her to be moved forward was denied. That was one of the reasons. The other reason was financial. It made more financial sense for me to educate my kids at home. I was working a full-time job as well as my husband. At the birth of our 3rd child, we did the math, we sat down and had a conversation, and it turned out that my take-home pay, after taxes, after childcare, after traveling, everything we were bringing home to me wasn't worth the money to have someone educating my children full-time. So we came up with some alternatives for me to fill that gap, make up the money from home. That's where the doing hair at home thing comes in. And we decided for me to homeschool. Another factor that played a part in it was the control that they have of my children, such as the mandatory vaccinations or us not being able to move around and change our scheduling because the school district wants you to have your kids on a specific schedule. My daughter has a lot of extracurricular activities, which I feel are an important part of her education to make her a whole individual. To me, there's more than ABCs and 1, 2, 3s to educating a child. To make them spiritually whole, mentally whole, physically whole, there's a lot more in play than I feel that the school district can supply. Also, I feel that I'm more vested in them being a whole person.
My mama, my teacher, is good. I like it. She gets to spend time with me, and she can help me with some stuff.
So where are we going?
We're going to jiu-jitsu.
My name is Tate Skifstrom. I'm an instructor here at Neutral Grounds. I'm a black belt under Evaldo Lima. Madison's great. She's very energetic. When I say energetic, she has a very positive attitude. She knows when to be competitive. She knows when to take her time. She's a good listener, interacts great with the other kids, and again, she's one of our toughest students out there.
My children do not participate in any programs that are specifically for Black children. However, they are involved in several activities. Well, Jalen, he does play football and he runs track for his high school, which commands a lot of time, actually. And then London, she does cheerleading, she does gymnastics, she runs track, she has acting classes and voice lessons.
You have to understand that education isn't about your kid just learning math and English. They need those things. Those are life skills that we need. But there are more important things for your kids to learn. How do they relate to other people? What kind of wife is your daughter going to be? What kind of husband is your son going to be? Are they going to be a good business partner? When they finally build that business, are they going to be an excellent leader? Those are skills that they can learn from a young age.
My children have benefited from being homeschooled because, as far as I can recall, neither one of them have had African American teachers. So they're being taught their culture by someone else who was taught our culture, but who don't really know. And it's easier for me to teach them myself. That way it takes the responsibility off of someone else. Public schools are limited to Black History Month because that's what they have to do, and that's not okay. They both should learn about their history all year long. So it's very important to me.
Public school system is not designed really to teach Black people. Let's get straight to the point. We're talking formal education right now. We're talking about the subjects you can master in formal education. And The public school systems in Washington, D.C. is struggling to do that, let alone give black people what they really need beyond a formal education, which is other types of cultural and even political education that would improve our overall condition.
Who is the president of the United States right now?
A black man. With a white Congress, with a white Senate, with what everything else. He doesn't have the control of everything. Go off. Go off.
A teacher inside of a classroom that does not understand some of the cultural nuances of the students that have been entrusted to that teacher, then it's very easy to paint those students with a broad brush of whatever the surface stereotype or the surface understanding may be. And a lot of times we are teaching our children where the primary agenda or the primary result is expediency and not actual education.
They are not learning in a way that is rhythmically in line, with melanated students. And I think that it is doing a disservice because it's teaching our children to grow up and get jobs and to be workers, opposed to being leaders of themselves and being self-employed.
Kids run around here and they yell and scream about everybody doing stuff to them when he has no respect. That's your problem. You're too ignorant.
You're too young. Life is too short for y'all to be selling out with that kind of nonsense.
Anything negative that the media can place on black people, it doesn't escape educators. So we're in there with everybody else. We're not the trusted group when in fact we are the pole marks of the community.
Right, it's hard to have a role model. It's hard to look up to someone who doesn't look like you inside the educational realm. If I aspire to be a college professor, to me, even as a grown man, I'll probably say, well, I don't see nobody who look like me, so I'm not even gonna waste my time doing it. Right, and then I go in all of these schools and I see a majority of white teachers are different race teachers who are not African Americans, but all of the cooks, majority of the secretaries, majorities of the janitors are what? Black.
Psychologists will tell you that the parent who is the same gender of the child is very instrumental in that child fostering a strong sense of self-love and a desire to grow into manhood and be a good man. And the same thing with women.
Hi, my name is Jalen Handler. I'm 16 years old and I'm a junior in high school. I started off in public school. I switched over to homeschooling in 7th grade. I felt like I really didn't like it. It wasn't for me. I'm more of a social person. I like to be in the classroom learning. And so after 1 year of homeschooling, I went to public school. And I've been in public school ever since. We don't talk about a lot of black history. Of course, Martin Luther King and all that. But there's a lot of black history that we don't learn about. And I do want to learn more. I feel like we don't get taught enough about it in school, and it needs to be taught about more.
If we teach today's students as we taught yesterday, we rob them of tomorrow. John Dewey.
Black people, black children in the public school system are continuously being ruined because they don't have any control over the curriculum.
The school system can ruin black children by failing to teach them a knowledge of self, by failing to teach them who we really are and the reality in society, and giving us a watered down version of certain key parts of that system.
The school system does not teach our children about true black history, right? We know we have Black History Month, but the same old narratives are reinforced. Rosa Parks, Dr. King, in which they are important figures and need to be celebrated. Their lives need to be celebrated, but why are we teaching our children in public schools that we started from slaves?
What is that little black child thinking? She's thinking that her origin in the world begins in slavery, and she really didn't get a break till after slavery and sometime recently in America.
See, so the messaging that it is sending our children is dangerous to be in that type of environment and not know any better.
My grandmother, my father, and my mother are more qualified than anybody I know to teach my kids our history, our culture, our tradition. So if you want me to come up with a book, I can come up with a book, sure. But I think my mother's more qualified. I think my father's more qualified to teach my son who he is, to teach my daughter who she is.
I mean, while some of the things that I see my daughter bringing home from school, I have to say that they're good, because if it's mathematics or it's science or certain kind of sciences, that's fine with me. But then I also have to see her come home with a different version of the Christopher Columbus story that I know is actually true.
You know, a lot of our people are suffering from mental illness, depression, the pressure of this society, watching videos of Eric Garner and, you know, brothers Mike Brown being killed and murdered out in the street. And our children are watching this. We don't have any sort of academia to deal with that. We barely even talk about it in our communities.
Have a seat. A Texas high school student has been charged with attacking a public servant.
Bullied or criminal? You said black not the children, the educators, right?
Educators, black educators.
Bullied or criminalized. Ooh, I never thought about that one.
The black teachers are trying their hardest to educate a group of people in this environment, and they barely can survive themselves.
I do think that black educators are bullied in a sense due to being a black male, and this is not a figment of my imagination. Statistics show that black male educators are not seen, quote unquote, as educators. We are seen as disciplinarians.
Listen, out of my house. Shut up and sit down.
Not of all children, but when black children are doing something, then they want to come and get the black teacher. I've been in that situation.
Think about the situation where a young black teacher is villainized because she's dressed too sexy, and she's not dressed any different than anybody else. Her body is built different, so are they body shaming?
Whether it's, you know, young sisters with Afro puffs or, you know, young brothers who may not necessarily know how to vibe with, you know, teachers of other nationalities. They are being, you know, put on medication. They're, you know, spending a lot of time in detention after school. And a lot of it is for nothing, you know, not based on test scores or, you know, academic progress or lack thereof.
The problem with the implicit bias is that my belief systems aren't causing me, especially being a former law enforcement officer, to negatively impact white citizens. Whereas white citizens are taking their implicit bias and their actions are negatively impacting many, many black people. So we had to go and be cognizant of the fact that, you know, this whole thing about implicit bias being the new term to go and couch racism and discrimination, to me it seems like a bad science.
I personally believe that when you put your child in a public school, or any school really, and leave it entirely to the school to educate your kids, you're putting your kids in danger. Our standards are so low that we don't even complain about the conditions of the schools that our children are in.
There are Black-owned and operated schools all across this country right now. A lot of them are struggling to keep their doors open. I, for the life of me, cannot understand why we have not made this a full-fledged state of emergency agenda to make sure that these schools have adequate funding.
We have to teach our young people, even if you are in a school that is under-resourced, underfunded, you still have a right to be there. You still have a right to be great. And we have to start messaging that.
The school system can fail you. It can ruin you if you are an absent parent. If you ain't on your job, the school system, you rolling the dice, and you're gonna lose on culture, or you rolling the dice otherwise.
We need for our brothers to start creating programs, after school programs, or creating programs where you can go into these schools and create manhood classes to teach our sons how to actually grow into manhood, as well as developing self-esteem, developing righteous relationships with females and things like that.
I mean, we have to really, in order for our community to make a change, is going to be economic and education. I
worked in the inner city, and I sent my son 5 school districts away, still public school though, but because the conditions were terrible, and I refused to have him go to inner city schools, which forced the cultural diversity and the issues that brought me back to homeschool. I worked for the school district for several years, probably about 12 years actually, and I would not send my own son to the public schools that I worked in. I actually had to send him away to other districts in better neighborhoods just so he could have a better educational opportunity and more things provided to him. There's a lack of educational supplies, things that if teachers don't put out on their own, their children are not gonna get. And that's not fair. The conditions of some of the buildings or some of the bathrooms where things are consistently broken or not working or run down, it's not really a good environment for children to want to excel in. You know, I think your environment is everything, and it plays a big part in how comfortable you are when you learn.
For many children, school is the first chance that they have gotten to be in a diverse group of people who are not their family. For many students, that can be uncertain, it can feel unfamiliar, it can feel unsafe. And there are ways of relating to one another that one family has that another one doesn't, and so forth. It's the first time that we get to know our neighbors in an official setting for many children.
So basically, if you put a child in a circumstance, in a situation where he and she has to learn and they can't, and they're not learning to your standards, then you're going to discourage them from learning.
What you have is a population that has systematic dysfunction, and therefore they are hardly a political threat and hardly a threat in the democratic system, because many of the time they're just faced with trying to survive everything that's happening in the hood. I have to say that from what I have observed, that at least at the middle school to high school level, you have to have some security. I mean, that's just, you have to have some security. I'm used to that because even when I was in school back in the 9th grade, we had plenty of security officers and police officers there because it was a gang problem.
Metal detectors. How can a child walk into a school and have to walk through a metal detector and feel safe?
My first 3 years, we didn't have metal detectors. My senior year, they brought metal detectors into school. Keep in mind that a lot of other Detroit public schools already had metal detectors. And the rationale was that, well, if we have these metal detectors, we can protect you. We can prevent people from bringing in lethal weapons into the school. But it was the first time I ever felt like I was a foreigner in a space that should have been familiar.
What's a resource officer?
The person who flipped that girl in South Carolina out the chair. That's a school resource officer.
Okay. Police. How do you feel about the police inside the school?
When I was in school, the words that we used were security guard, right? Or, school guard, etc. But they were not glorified police people.
School resource officers is just a fancy way of saying police officers or vigilantes, as I will call them, who are coming into the schools to police the students. This is just another method of criminalizing our young people.
And so a school resource officer, in my view, is supposed to hold the container to be safe enough for people for students to explore and to relate to one another without feeling that they are in danger or that somebody can bully them or they get into a fight, etc.
You know, are you projecting protection and security, or are you projecting fear?
There's two things that's happening. Are you protecting me from outsiders, or are you protecting others from me? That's the question that the officers have to ask.
Do I feel as if psychologically they may have an impact on our young people, how they think about themselves, how they think about their community? Yes.
And if you know anything about the psychology of the mind, you know that fear is a deterrent from experiencing and realizing your highest self and your best self.
Kids in a learning environment such as a school are being distracted by the fact that law enforcement is about control, and they're controlling students instead of many times having a good type of interaction with students. The teachers, the administrators of schools are using the law enforcement officers to actually harass students.
If you don't have a rapport with students and you have a fear or you don't have a respect for them, then you can't really protect them, no matter who they are.
And that is one of the reasons why I feel so strongly about not putting my kids in an environment where they're the outsider or the outcast or the quote-unquote minority. I don't want that for my kids. I want them to see people like them successful. I want to see people like them who care about them. I want their teachers to be somebody who says, "How's your grandmother doing?"
Certainly what should not ever happen is that a school resource officer becomes themselves the threat to the children's safety, as we have seen in many viral videos that have gone on recently, etc.
We saw the young sister who was slung around by her hair by a resource officer and basically, treated like a common thug and a common criminal. You put them in environments that make them feel like criminals anyway. They live in communities that make them feel like they're criminals, and they have access to crime at every turn. And then you turn around and expect the child to be properly educated.
I guess some of the dangers of it is that sometimes these officers and security guards go too far, and therefore we have incidents that we see on television and otherwise of children being abused and becoming victims of certain kinds of security brutality.
I feel that whenever you have a situation where you have more public resource officers or police officers than you have mental health counselors, that's a strong disconnect. That's incongruent for me.
I don't have a problem with officers or resource officers being inside the school, but I have a problem if they don't understand the environment that they are the officer over.
So do I think we need order and rules and regulations, and do those officers help to create that? Yes. But to the extent that some of these high schools look like mini prisons and mini juvenile systems, absolutely not.
We think that metal detectors and resource officers, they're just a part of it. But what is that doing for them as a person? What is that really doing for what they have and the gift that they have inside? How is it helping them? Is it helping them flourish, or is it detracting from it? Resource officers and metal detectors don't add to the element of learning that we truly want our child to be in.
So after a child is discouraged from learning, or he or she doesn't learn, then they start to roll into a survival mode. So it's already been proven through data that once the child doesn't have the resources that's necessary, then they start to rob, kill, and steal, and do all those, go into a life of crime to survive.
According to a UCLA study, Missouri is #1 in the country in its disparity in the way it suspends elementary kids, black kids to white kids. It suspends 3% of white kids and over 13% of black kids. We're #1 in the country for that. So then when you juxtapose that with the school to prison pipeline numbers and African American kids, I mean, it all coincides.
When we look at people who are committing crimes because they're impoverished, they lack an education, They don't have an ability to raise their incomes, and now they're moving forward, getting older in life. They find themselves in a system of a trajectory that's downward instead of upwards, and they find themselves going to jail.
The desegregation of schools and us fighting to get adequate education for our children, and the increase in prisons and black men being put in jail for the most minimal crimes, those things ran parallel. So they found ways to basically use the lack of education, which it's funny that you would punish the children for not being properly educated when it's the system's responsibility to educate the child, when monies are being allocated from state, local, and federal governments to make sure the children are being educated.
The people are putting more money into the prison system than they are into the education system.
San Leandro, California, they have a juvenile detention center. They approved a $160 million grant, and they're basically adding a whole entire new wing onto the San Leandro Juvenile Hall. Now, $160 million for a juvenile detention center when all of the public schools in the surrounding area are faltering and are falling apart and are closing. You mean to tell me there's not a systematic agenda in order to keep particularly black and Latino boys and girls, to put them in the prison industrial complex, where there not only is the system going to make money, but also all of these corporations, from Victoria's Secret to General Electric to many other corporations, they're making billions of dollars every year off of the miseducation of our children.
Put your hands behind your back, Kevin. You're under arrest. Put your hands behind your back. I'm going to take you to jail. Okay?
January 1st, a new law went into effect in Missouri that children receive a felony for fighting at school. Schoolyard fights are now felonies. That can send you to jail. So now all of a sudden, you play God in a sense to where you going to dictate whether you like this kid or not. Well, I'm not going to, we're not going to have this kid arrested, but this one over here, we can't wait to get him out. And that's what's happening. We're pushing kids out.
White people are underrepresented in prison systems. 1 in 17 white males is incarcerated, whereas 1 in 3 black men my age have been incarcerated. That's a disparity that we can't overlook. We have 2/3 of the population which is white, and we have 1/3 of the population which is minority. Yet minority citizens are overrepresented for committing the same criminal act as a white person, but white people aren't being negatively stigmatized by the crime. That's wrong.
It's really unfortunate that now we have young people who are growing up getting used to being brutalized, getting used to being disrespected, and won't even stand up for their fellow students. It's like, how can you allot enough money to have police officers present in schools, but not have male mentors coming into the schools to make sure that these young brothers, who may at times cause issues in school environments, to train them in manhood, to help them to curb their behavior and to figure out what's happening in their households and in their lives to make them so angry where they bring their problems into school. It's like we're putting a Band-Aid on a gunshot wound.
And because law enforcement has a command and control and then enforcement mechanism, it's not an equal enforcement opportunity mechanism. It's not enforcing the laws equally. If it were locking up white men the same and similarly situated as black men or Hispanic men, then we would have the same destabilization that would occur in the white communities.
I would say that as a community and as an activist community and as a political community, when you're talking about the public school system, I would say that our involvement as parents and as a community could make a difference, could make changes, and could hold that system accountable. Because parents have an obligation to engage that system and force it in the direction that we want it to go.
California, which is where I'm from, has the largest population of prisons, privately owned as well as state-funded prisons and federal prisons. They have the highest statistics, and here you have children all across the board from Los Angeles to Oakland that are being miseducated, and they have beds in those prisons that are actually waiting for them.
America is banking on you to fail. They are getting paid paid for you to fail. There's people there's a judge waiting on you. There's a police officer waiting on you to fail. So if you want to shock the shit out of them, you better succeed.
I'm Ariel Sky Williams. I'm 8 years old. I'm unarmed and I have nothing that will hurt you.
It's just kind of a thing we practice at our house.
You have a right to have an attorney present while you are questioned. If you can't afford to hire one, the court will appoint you one. Do you understand that? Say yes or no. You do.
Now the officer shot Brisbane twice at close range in the torso, later realizing Brisbane was only holding a pill bottle.
Rice was shot and killed by rookie Cleveland cop Timothy Lohman last November outside the Cadell Rec Center on the city's west side. His gun was actually an airsoft pistol and that he was only 12 years old.
Shots fired! 321, we have shots fired. We have one suspect down.
The second time this week, a black man is shot by a police officer.
A similar loss of yet another unarmed young black man.
We've had our own Michael Brown.
Please don't tell me my boyfriend just went like that.
You done murdered my son, man, for nothing. When he was trying to get away from you. He was trying to get away from you, man. And you kept shooting him while his back was under the truck. And you kept shooting him, man. You kept shooting him. In his back. His back was turned to you, man. Get back in the shack on him. Let me check on him. Get back, sir.
I just want to know if the protocol is to shoot an unarmed man down dead in front of somebody's house anytime they feel like it.
Many times as parents, we look at our little fourth grader and we say, oh, wow, they're so cute. But there are other people that are looking at them and they're saying, they're a target. There's a system designed to send them to prison. There's a true correlation here, and we have to take it serious. If I saw these problems in the beginning, if I see that they're not learning at a pace that's bringing out the best in them, then they are being killed inside. Their gifts are being killed. Their purpose is being annihilated. We're putting them on a path to prison. And as a parent, we're also a part of that. And we have to take ownership and we have to take back our kids and to say, how can I educate you so you become confident in who you are and what you have to offer and the gifts that you have come here to give to society?
Children have the ability. It's a matter of, are we practicing? Are we giving them everything that they need to get to this next level?
If we can foster an environment that supports and encourages the love of knowledge, not just, getting up and talking and teaching. I'm talking about loving knowledge. I'm talking about seeking knowledge, being interested in ancient civilizations, being interested in African history.
You do have to cultivate in your children the mindset that they never have to ask anybody for anything because they are fully equipped to create, to be creators, and they are.
Every single time that I asked my father what a word meant, he never answered me. It got to the point where I was like, never mind, I'll go look it up, because I already knew that that's what he wanted me to do. And so I got very used to, when I had a question, I knew how to find the answer.
Some of your children are absolutely geniuses. In order for you to understand that, then you have to communicate with your child. You have to challenge your child. You have to make them, show up and show who they actually are.
Am I bringing out the brilliance in my child? Am I bringing out the best? Am I bringing out their passions, their gifts, and what's going to ultimately make them feel confident in expressing that?
But as a parent and you in the public school system, you are duty bound to supplement, augment the knowledge that your child is getting by teaching them yourselves.
Once upon a time, a queen was about to have a baby, but she became ill. A magic golden flower healed her and a princess with golden hair was born. The king and queen launched lanterns to celebrate.
Things such as mathematics, phonics, grammar. I do use scholastic programs that are full programs that a teacher would use. But as far as education, I do use everything that in my hands. You can get education in everything in YouTube, but I don't use those for the whole education. So for whole education, I educate around current events, her questions, or just conversations we had. So, for example, Mommy, why are rainbows that color? I will go to YouTube and I'll find a list of videos on rainbows, the colors of the rainbow, how rainbows formed. I use YouTube, I use online, I use my own knowledge. If she has a question about, say, guitars, you know what, my brother plays a guitar pretty well. Let's FaceTime your uncle. And he'll sit there and discuss, well, you know, I know guitar came from here, so we do use the internet for a lot. I don't per se let her on the internet just yet by herself, but I do use the internet as a huge resource for me. I'm a YouTube junkie. I educate myself on YouTube, so I do use YouTube for a lot of things. For her sign language, because I do teach them sign language as well as Spanish right now. I don't do sign language myself, so I have to go to YouTube. So I go to YouTube and they do sign language and kids songs for sign language. There's a plethora of free resources on the internet, and you literally type in such and such free and it pops right up in front of you.
If you really want to be educated, you want to be a scholar. And being a scholar means you research and teach yourself beyond textbook education.
Fortunately for me, we were so poor that there was nothing to do at home. We didn't have cable. There was nothing to eat. So I said I might as well go to school and hang out with my friends and play sports. So that's ultimately what I done. And with that, I surrounded myself with other people, other scholars who pushed me to do well and ultimately landed me here.
You have community organizations like Males to Men in Oakland, California. I know they're doing a great job with teaching young brothers about, you know, how to grow into manhood. You have brothers like Boyce Watkins with the Black Wealth business program that he has, and teaching young children about aspiring to be business owners and to work for themselves. You have Black Girl Code in Oakland, California, which some sisters started to be able to teach young Black girls about coding and creating apps and things like that.
You'll be amazed at how many young people need to see other people of color who are doing well, because they may not see it in their household. Their only reflections and representation of Black success may be on TV. So why not be that person they aspire to be? Because exposure is key.
Young people must pursue higher education. It is the only thing that can liberate us from our ignorance. Maya Angelou.
College in my family wasn't discussed much because, of course, my grandmother didn't go to college and graduate from college, nor did my mother graduate from college. So basically, who was going to talk to me about college? My teacher talked to me about college. She asked Chanel, what college are you going to? And that sparked a college conversation. And a college conversation sparks a different way of life. If you want it, if you have it in your mind to do so. So it's always going to be on the individual student, but we can also create the environment where these numbers grow to a mass.
If we really are committed to education, then it behooves us to be masters of education. Education means to draw out. And so when you're drawing out that person's genius, that person's talent, that person's learning style, and you learn to harness it, yes, it sounds more complicated and it sounds like it's going to take a lot more time now than what we have. We don't have the budget, we may not have the time, teachers may not have the patience necessarily. It may not be politically expedient to spend all this time and effort to revamp our schooling system this way, but I promise you, if we spend the time now, we will spend less time sending people to prisons and dealing with drugs or domestic violence and all those other ills that ail us now, because we've gotten it when a child is coming up.
we used to have coaches and we used to have mentors and we used to have people who were very hands-on and direct in helping young people to aspire to be great, to expose them to things beyond their block or beyond their neighborhood. And we've gotten away from that. You have people who live in communities, they don't even know their neighbors, let alone want their neighbors, reprimanding their child or giving their child advice. We've gotten away from that.
There's so much that you can do for your kids by just building a community, and it doesn't have to be your next door neighbor. It's an online community. It is your neighbors. It's also your family. It's everything. Just everybody, all hands on deck.
So I'm an educator, whether I'm inside of a brick and mortar building, I'm online on social media, or I'm out on the street corner, or I'm in someone's home, or in front of a camera. I'm an educator at heart, so I'm gonna educate regardless.
But when we take responsibility for our own part as a parent, as a teacher, as an educator, as an administrator, as a staff member, and also the students themselves, when we begin, all of us, to stand 100% responsible for the result that we create collectively, we'll start to see those changes politically and educationally.
The whole idea of homeschooling our kids is to bring forth an idea of Black success. Success that makes them feel confident in who they are and what they have to offer. Measuring it by standards that we impose upon ourselves. Taking back our kids, taking back their confidence, and more importantly, taking back what they have to offer. That's why homeschooling is really important, and that's why it's us as parents that have to take that step.
So what do you do when the system's not working? You start to create new systems. And I think homeschooling and its various adaptations are born out of that.
Parents educating their kids is probably the best thing that can happen to their children. And it's also one of the best things that can happen to a family.
Well, my favorite subject is our story because it teaches me about my culture, where I came from, and who I am.
I currently homeschool my kids, and I believe that that is the best way to really make sure that your kids are getting a quality education. So education is a really important part for us.
Again, bring it back. We're standing there, brothers and friends. Right now, these girls going, go, 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 go.
Children are already being educated by their parents just by modeling their behavior and language patterns and emotional habits and so forth. So we have to be very conscious that that's something that's already happening.
Just like you, kid. Just like you, man.
The social needs for my kids were very different because I waited later to homeschool Jalen. So he had been in school from pre-K all the way to 7th grade, and to pull him out into a home environment, that was a hard adjustment for him. He needed the physical interaction and socialization amongst his peers. And so I felt like I needed to let him have that. London, on the other hand, she was in 1st grade, and she's an extrovert. I can take her anywhere. She makes friends with anyone. But I also, more importantly than that, I keep her involved in team sports and team activities, and she's consistently around other children, so there's no void or no sense of her being alone or without at any given time.
If I were to encounter a family or friend who was just bordering on the cusp of homeschooling and traditional schooling, I would approach it by the way I approach everybody who needs advice. I would have them make a list, pros, cons. List them out. And if you need to discuss it with someone who does do it, or if you don't know, there's homeschooling groups on Facebook. There's homeschooling ideas on Pinterest, but I would have the pros cons list first, which your pros are going to outweigh your cons. And I would find a way to address every problem that's on the con list. And a lot of times the con is the financial obligation, or I'm not that smart, how am I going to homeschool my child? I would consider your resources and speak to people who are already doing it, ask how they got into it. And to me, you always go with your gut. If you're even having the question or having the desire that I think I might want to homeschool, then you probably should be homeschooling.
Aren't we all scholars in here? Yes. Let's go on to the next one.
Some people may believe that it's impossible to school Black children. I don't. And I don't think it's just a function of homeschooling. Because when we think about schooling, it's not just about a physical space. You can attend a traditional public school or private school or charter school, and your parents or other adults can still supplement that education.
Believe that you are equipped and you're qualified, no matter who says what, to be the primary educator for your child. That's the first thing.
Yes, it may be a little chaotic. It's true. I don't want to deny that. It may be a little chaotic. It may be a little messy, and it may take longer to get everybody's viewpoint across, etc. But it is important that we allow ourselves a moment of chaos now so that we can have excellence later.
I try to make women understand that just the same way that nobody teaches you how to give birth, but you do it. Nobody teaches you all the things that happen for your kids, but you do it. And if you're focused and you're dedicated, man, we do an awesome job. And the same applies to education.
My relationship with my children has actually been very positive. We're a lot closer. And even though my son is not homeschooled anymore, I'm still very hands-on with his school activities as well. I pop up at the school on a given, and Homeschooling London has actually given me the freedom to do that. And then with London, we're very close because we talk about everything. And then the physical interaction, I don't miss a beat. You know, I'm there every step of the way, every milestone. You know, in school, you miss that. You know, you miss things, or you don't realize how important the things that you're missing until you have the homeschool life and you get to be a part of all of that. You're a part of the struggle. It's not the teacher telling you that, oh, they did this today. It's me witnessing for myself. And I don't think there's a better feeling than that, you know?
You know, the blessing of today, it's a gift and a curse, but the internet is a major blessing as far as us finding ways to, you know, help to facilitate educating our children.
There's so many resources available for parents now. You have Khan Academy, Khan, Khan Academy online.
You can go to that website and find everything from, you know, lessons on mathematics to science to, you know, statistics, geometry, you know, as far as if you need a side tutor, if your child is struggling in school.
Well, there's Coursera. You can use Udemy, and you can, of course, Google anything you need.
Duolingo, also for learning different languages. We've come to a world where it is imperative that we know more than one language.
There is the Black Business School, courtesy of Dr. Boyce Watkins. There's a wealth of knowledge there.
Also, like I said, you know, YouTube University, now you can basically go online and find out how to do anything. My son can break down, you know, can figure out how to, you know, break down a PlayStation, you know, take it apart, put it back together again. I mean, it blows my mind how fast he is with his hands and, you know, putting together things as far as technology is concerned. When I need help, you know, as far as that's concerned, I ask my son.
There is, again, so many online programs that you can find. And I also think that it's important to use what we have now. We're in the age of technology. We're in the age of social media. There's nothing wrong with just starting a co-op. A co-op would be a collection of families who are homeschooling and they share knowledge. I personally come from the business world, so I believe kids should learn how to build businesses from a young age.
But there are many resources out there that you can just, with your own innovation, your own creativity, and then resources that you can find online. You can teach your children and supplement their education that they get in school.
If you're really dedicated, you can find the resources, you can find the people, you can find anything and everything to build your child up. It just starts with your intention and your focus, your discipline, and your dedication.
In terms of schooling, my definition of success, it would be making a whole person, not just a person who's proficient in reading or math, but a whole human being, someone who's emotionally intelligent, who's intellectually intelligent, but physically healthy. I think making that person fully rounded, acknowledging all levels of advancement.
I think every African-American household should have a supplemental curriculum at home. A curriculum that like lists each grade what a child should learn, and also things that is not taught within the school system that the parent can teach a child at home.
Understanding how to best pull out the confidence in your child doesn't have to be reliant so much on school curriculum. You don't have to feel so much pressure to say, how do I get them to learn in a way that best suits them? Just watch them, just see what really allows them to get excited about learning.
Another thing is when something breaks in the house, instead of punishing your child, help them to figure out how to quote unquote make it right. So you have an opportunity to teach social skills like taking responsibility, apologizing to somebody that you've hurt or disappointed, and then taking the initiative and the responsibility to make it right.
I think that it is very important for us to find ways for learning to be fun for our children to be interesting for our children again.
I have 2 kids. One of my kids is naturally inclined to technology, and he's only 7 years old. So we have to cultivate that. We have to create an environment for him to develop his skills.
Well, my son's a tennis shoe junkie. That's his thing. He loves it. You know, how can I teach a lesson about science and about mathematics using tennis shoes?
My other child is more inclined to sing. She takes piano lessons and singing lessons, and she's going to become a phenomenal singer. It doesn't mean she has to be famous or anything like that, but she has to know that whatever is in her can be honed, and she can do it at any level that she wants.
How can we teach lessons about business using fashion? How can we teach young sisters lessons about geometry using hair? I have a lecture where I use sacred geometry and compare and contrast it to different braids that black women around the world do, where they're basically recreating different aspects of nature, whether it's flowers and things like that, using hair.
This rap music that I can't even understand one word of it, I listen to it because the kids like it. So that way I can teach the pedagogy of hip-hop, the pedagogy in hip-hop, and I can teach them language and metaphors and assemblies, and I can link all of that to Shakespeare, to W.E.B. Du Bois, and I can link all of it as we trace the genesis of it.
Why can't you use social media in order to teach them a lesson about life, about politics? Don't shy away from these things, because when your children get let loose, they go buck wild, you know? So I think that it's not necessarily embracing, but using pop culture as a means of teaching lessons.
Let's say that you have a repair job at home. You need to find different roofers, for example. You need to replace your roof, and you need to find out different roofers. Do you know that by having your children learning about comparing quotes and asking questions, they learn about budgets, they learn about negotiation, they learn about, you know, being thorough in their due diligence and so forth.
We need to create new textbooks based on just African history, where we can, you know, bring these cultures alive and let our children see what these people look like, so that they're not just studying Greco and Roman and European history, and then, you know, once we get to black people, we're talking about slavery.
When you're homeschooling, you don't have to feel so much pressure to follow the books and a curriculum. You do want to make sure that whatever standards your state brings forth in terms of educating your child at that grade level, that you do follow. But it can be in any way that your child learns best.
We get taught in public schools to go get a good job and work for somebody else and keep working and keep working and keep working. Whereas my kids now, even at 7 and 10 years old, they're already in a position to be business owners. They have looked into Amazon, they've looked into eBay, they're talking about writing books, they have superhero books about black kids. Their minds are so open.
And that typically happens when you give people enough space to think, to fail, to try things, to innovate, to wonder, to be creative, to be in inquiry.
By seeing themselves as scholars, by seeing themselves as brilliant, as seeing themselves as creators, as innovators, as thinkers.
And that happens a lot with homeschooling, where I don't see that necessarily in organized school systems.
Our young people can excel. We are resilient people. And even under the worst of circumstances, if we give them the language, if we give them the tools that they need, they will do well.
The challenges that you encounter getting there, I'm going to tear it up, are so worth it. And your child is worth it. And if you're feeling like your child is lacking something in the public school education or whatever you're doing currently, you owe it to them to do what you have to do to give them the best.
I don't believe in making excuses, because I have 1,000 excuses of why I wouldn't do this, or I feel like I wouldn't have the time to do this, but these are my children.
And you'll be surprised how smart you are, and you'll be surprised how much you learn with them. I didn't know what a rhombus was until about a couple months ago, but now I know. So the things that you don't know, we're in a current environment where there's so much stuff to fill in the gap, and your kids will not be missing anything.
Their needs come first before mine, and I think sometimes single parents put their needs in front of their children's, and it should be the other way around. You got to change your thinking, you have to change your mentality, and you have to put them first.
You owe it to them to do what you have to do to give them the best. And for me, most people, homeschooling's the best.
For me, there's no I can't. It's I have to get it done, or I have to figure out a way, or I have to make it happen. And so I do. And I'm happy, and they're happy, and I feel good.
It's doable. It's doable. It's doable. You can do it. You can do it. You can do it. I would just tell them that they can do it.
The function of education is to teach one to think incisively and to think critically. Intelligence plus character. That is the goal of true education. Martin Luther King Jr.
All right. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that film, and I hope you guys will join me in giving a digital round of applause to our filmmakers and those who starred in the film. I see your comments coming in. You said powerfully epic, very educational, great movie, thumbs up, excellent. I love it. All the comments are coming in 1,000 miles an hour, and so I hope we'll give it up to real quick. Yeah, imagine let's sort of give a digital like standing ovation, like a couple minutes of just clapping for the director and the visionary behind the project, Roosevelt Mitchell III, and Noma Langa is actually coming in. You guys saw Noma Langa; she was in the film, and there's a couple other people that are going to actually participate in future Black movie nights. Madam President, who had the dark hair and the glasses. I got to reach out to Malik Zulu Shabazz. I love that brother a lot. There's just a lot of great people. Miss Ogando, who's extraordinary. So anyway, okay, so Noma says she's logging in, and she's all the way over in Botswana. So she's coming from across the world. And some of y'all are coming from across the world. How many of you are even in the United States? Are any of you outside the country? If you're outside the country, shout out where you're from. Okay, I see Canada, or I see Texas. That's pretty much like outside the country. And okay, there we go. Yeah, St. Lucia. All right. Oh, Haiti. Oh, Haiti. Wow, cool. Okay, so let's have a little conversation about this film. First thing I want to start off with is I want everybody to know, remember, we're not just about talk, we're also about action. So there is a Raising a Black Scholar curriculum that Roosevelt put together, and you can actually go take a look at it. Write down this URL. Somebody please type this in the chat. It's raisingascholar.com. Is that right, Roosevelt? Raisingascholar.com?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right. Raisingascholar.com, and he has a whole great curriculum, and I think I got a copy of it back there in the other room, and I just love it. And I think that, the important point about things like this is that you have, there we go, it's right there. Smart Black man right there. If you have a product, always keep your product around, always keep your brand around. If you go on camera, wear your merch. And actually, we'll talk more about that in a little bit. Also, for those of you that are looking for tools, if you want to homeschool, another thing I always recommend is Powernomics. Powernomics.com. Dr. Claude Anderson has some extraordinary books that represent foundational knowledge that every Black child in America should have. Everything from Black history to economics.
Also, you guys know in the Black Business School, we have Black Millionaires of Tomorrow in our Black CEO Factory for entrepreneurs. So if you want your children to go to business school early, send them to blackmillionairesoftomorrow.com. That's blackmillionairesoftomorrow.com. You can use the discount code Black Movie Night, all one word, Black Movie Night, and you get a massive discount. I can't remember what the discount is exactly, but there are specialists on the line that can talk to you about that now. So let's go to our director, the lady of the evening, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way. The woman of the hour. How about that? Tiara KJ Williams. So Tiara, I've known Tiara about a decade now, and you know what linked us and had us working together was the fact that we had a common vision for the way Black entertainment is supposed to go. And so you went and you just did the damn thing and came back with something that I was super impressed with. Can you kind of speak to what your thought process was when you put together this project? I think you're muted, so I'm gonna try to unmute you. There we go. I think I unmuted you. Let me unmute you.
Okay. Hey. So yes, absolutely. Obviously, we had a conversation, and I had when I had my daughter, Lauren Tyler, I wanted her to be prepared for college. And so I was particularly interested in this topic anyway. So I was thankful that you brought me on. But when we sat down and really started looking through the footage, because here's the thing, Roosevelt had all of these amazing interviews, but there was no story. There was just all of these brilliant people saying all these amazing things. And so my job was to do research. Our team did an amazing job. We just sat down and we just thought about what was important, what would be important to me if I were watching it as a person that didn't homeschool. I was in the middle of homeschooling my own daughter. I wanted her to be prepared for first grade or kindergarten, but I prepared her for 8th grade. So supplement the whole idea of like supplementing education. It was important for me. And I thought that other parents would want to know that. So I was extremely connected to the material. Like I said, research. I learned a lot doing this project. That's why I love doing, working on films and producing them, because I really get a chance to spend time and learn about all these things and then help other people through that. So I'm so excited that you all were encouraged to, maybe change your mind a little bit. If I've done that tonight, then that was a blessing. That's why we do what we're doing. That's why I do what I do. So
I love it. So Roosevelt, let me ask you this question. You're passionate about the education of our kids. I mean, you're an award-winning educator, and you've been in the trenches for quite a while now. Why do you think it's important for parents to look at homeschooling as an option, or to look at alternative educational options outside the existing system?
It's very important because all children, it's like a cookie cutter. All children can't fit inside that one shape, right? So it's different kids learn different ways, especially we talk about an educational system where a lot of teachers only know how to teach the old school way of standing in front of the classroom, and then they expect for kids to come to school and just work for 8 hours. It doesn't work like that now. With cell phones and video games and other things going on, kids' attention spans, I think I read is only like 16 minutes now before they need a break, right? So even myself as an educator, I have to come up with creative ways and do more project-based teaching in order to keep the kids' attention span going. So, and even with that, some kids just don't like school, and I can understand that, right? My best friend, he almost didn't finish high school, yet he makes over $1 million a year as a Black entrepreneur. So school wasn't for him, but he still got his education for the things that he wanted to do, and now he's able to pay for his kids to go to college with no student loans. So again, I always want Black parents to understand that you have options. You don't have to do what your parents done, your grandparents done, what everybody else is doing. If it's not for them, maybe a different route may be best.
Well, I want to say this. Nayetta, I saw you say that your daughter Anna liked the movie. And I don't know how many of you, if you brought your kids in, say something in the chat, because I want to give a shout out to the parents that brought their kids, that bring their children to things like this. So, you got to, somehow involve the children in this. talk to them about this, because you got to raise them in the movement. That's how you create the great leaders of tomorrow. You got to raise them in the movement where, because remember, think about how we look back and we say, yeah, I remember in the 70s when my mama used to play Stevie Wonder and I've been loving it ever since. Or maybe in the 80s, I used to go to a certain kind of church, well, now we're in the economic and educational empowerment church. And your children have to be a part of this. They have to be connected because that's how you sink that into their minds. And so Noma Langa, it looks like Noma Langa is in here, but I don't see your video, Noma. Are you able to turn your video on? Hey, Noma?
I saw shoes.
Uh-oh. Okay, well, Noma, try to see if you can get your video on. I'm going to mess around with this, see if I can get you in there. So Amani Walker. Amani, let me ask you this question. So you, how long have you been homeschooling your kids, Amani?
I think she muted.
Let's see, let me see if I can unmute her. There we go. Okay. Hey, Amani, can you hear us? You know what? Amani is muted, and I cannot unmute you, Amani. So try to hit a button and see if you can unmute it. There we go. Go ahead. Okay. Amani, how long have you been homeschooling your kids?
Well, since over 10 years. My son's 15, so it would be, I guess, 15 years since he was in the womb. So yeah, 15 years.
Really, 15 years? Okay, so how did that end up happening? I mean, was it something that did you do it for religious reasons? Did you do it for just because that was where you were raised? Did you do it because you had an issue with the public school? What led you to start homeschooling your children?
Like I said before, their father was homeschooled. I did have an issue with the public school system because I went to public school. But when I came out of school, I didn't like the direction that the public school system was going. So I wanted to be able to incorporate what I believe in my children's life. So I think children, for me personally, I think children spend a lot of time in school and are heavily influenced by that environment, which is, good and bad at times. So it depends on what, kind of school they go to. But I wanted to have a heavy impact on their life and be very involved in their upbringing, as well as teach them a lot of life skills. So we actually incorporate a lot of life skills like gardening and survival skills and things like that. And so that's one of the other reasons why.
Oh, okay. So life skills and survival skills. I like the way that sounds. It sounds to me like we got a lot of kids coming out of school that have no life skills. And right now, it's almost like because we're in this quarantine and we're all sort of forced in this situation that we're in, maybe this is the opportunity for us to learn what resources are out there, just in case you say, hey, I never want to send my kids back. I never, so Noma Langa, I want to say welcome. It's very good to see you all the way from Botswana. And I see some, okay, just so you know, you have some admirers in the chat. Now y'all be respectful now. Now Noma did a great job in the film, and Noma you also homeschool your kids, and what makes your perspective interesting is that you're not innately African American. You're from Botswana, and you married an African American man, so you came and saw the African American experience from the outside looking in. Can you sort of speak to what happened with your experience with the school system that led you to decide to homeschool your children?
Sure. Hi, guys. Nice to see you all. So we started homeschooling when our two children were in a school system where we were actually the only Black family in the neighborhood. So they ended up being the only Black child in each of their classrooms and sometimes even inside the whole grade. The whole reason why we moved to a quote unquote white neighborhood was it was a good school system. But then I later found out, or we all later found out, that being the only Black kid in a whole school or in a whole grade meant that you were the bad kid or you were the kid that was singled out. And I was getting a lot of reports about my children that were a huge contrast to what we knew our children could do. And they were saying they didn't know things that I personally taught them or that their father personally taught them. So we started to realize that something was very, very wrong. And I always share that when I realized eventually that my children were actually just in a really abusive environment, I cried a lot, but I just decided to correct the mistake. and we took them out of school and we started homeschooling them. I will say now that we came to Botswana unexpectedly and stayed here longer than we expected. But the nice thing has been that they have been able to try out public school for a while. And when they tried it, they excelled extremely well. The headmaster, the teachers, everybody around them looked like them. So it was a great experience. That's been a great experience for them too. And we supplemented homeschool while they're doing that.
Okay, so let me ask you this. I'll move back to Tiara. Tiara, when you were going through this process of actually studying a family or a couple of families that were homeschooling their kids, did anything jump out at you? I mean, I know a lot of parents that would like to do it, but they're just afraid, or they don't think they know what to do, or they're worried that their kids are going to turn out crazy, or whatever the case may be. Some parents, their kids do turn out crazy, but what did you sort of see? I mean, did you see things that kind of made you say, hey, maybe this isn't as hard as some people think it is, or maybe it's more difficult than some people think? I mean, what did you sort of learn as you were going through this journey of making this film?
Yeah, like I said, me myself, I was homeschooling my daughter Lauren, so we were making up. I mean, I remixed Beyonce songs from 1 to 100. We did all kinds. There was things that I was doing that were. I mean, I had a creative child, so I just got creative. I mean, I'm a creator, right? So I just got creative about the way I taught her. But for this project, I wanted it to be balanced. Right. So we had a family of 4, right? A wife, a husband, and their children. But I wanted a single mother because I wanted to make sure that the people that watched it felt like it was relatable to them. So I wanted to create some balance. Our single mom was just amazing. She was a superhero to me. Just the way she approached it, her just deciding this is what I'm going to do. Regardless if I have all the tools or not. So, those things were important. And I wanted to make sure that everybody, whether you wanted to go full blown, right, with the homeschooling or just supplement or do something in between, it was all possible. During the day, I know, and that's the last thing I'll say, but during the day I would talk to my daughter would have school and we would come home and I would make sure I was teaching her Black history. So it made me even more like, no, you're going to learn about W.E.B. Du Bois today. Or, whoever, those Black people, whoever are, teaching her our history, but just making sure she knew things that she wasn't learning in school was very important. So, that was important to me. Just making sure I had balance, boys.
Interesting. So, Roosevelt, so you've been in school systems for how many years now?
Yet again, I'm sorry, I missed it.
How many years have you worked in the school system, Roosevelt?
Since 2005, 15 years.
So you also see both sides of that fence, as a parent and also as an educator. What do you think of some things that parents, let's say you have a parent that just isn't ready to remove their child from the system and just wants to get something more out of their system. What are some quick things that you think parents could take away that they could begin to apply tomorrow that would ensure that when the quarantine's over, that their children are not going to be abused by the system, that they're actually going to get what the taxpayer dollars are paying for?
Well, the first thing is, again, and I really appreciated that single mom in there. I'm a single father, right? So, and I'm responsible for everything. So I got to drop kids off, pick them up, cook, clean, teach, and do everything. So for people in my situation, it's hard to just homeschool full time. So I'm from the school of, I believe that even if you are sending your kids to school and they're getting a fantastic education, you still should supplement it at home because education starts at home first. So even with creating Raising a Black Scholar, the curriculum, my goal was for people to say, okay, well, these are the things that's not being taught inside the school district in order to make my child, to give my child a more balanced education in that sense. So even if you are sending your child to the school district, to the school, first you got to hold all the stakeholders accountable. You got to know your rights as a parent, know your the school rules and your children's rights, and then you got to have open lines of communication with the principal and your child's teacher. So
And that's what's most important, holding them accountable, because what a lot of parents don't know and don't understand is within the school system, it's like the squeaky oil gets the grease. It's so many parents who don't call, who don't show up for parent-teacher conferences, who don't do anything. And those kids, the principal or teachers will do just about anything too, because they know there's no repercussions because their parents aren't coming. But the parents who call all the time, who complaining, who showing up to everything, those are the students who get treated by the book and knowing that, oh man, you know, we can't mistreat this child, mama sue, right? So they get the best education. So I always tell my parents, show up, make phone calls, cause a fuss if you need to, but that way your child will get exactly what he or she deserves as far as, you know, in a sense of a great education.
Well, I love that. I'm gonna call you double A. That's advocacy leads to accountability, right? That's what you're saying. That we need advocates. You know, it's like going to court without a lawyer. No, you shouldn't do that, right? So maybe
right.
Go to school without a parent advocating for you. And I get that. I get that. You know, when I was about 5 years old, you know, believe it or not, I got into a lot of trouble at school. I know that I'm pretty much right middle of the road, and I don't do anything controversial. I pretty much stay in my lane, and I don't cause no trouble. But as a 5-year-old, you know, for some reason they had this impression that I would cause a ruckus every now and then. And the teacher, this young white lady, my mama told me this story. She came to me, came to my mama, and she said, your son, now mind you, it was one of those young white liberal ladies, and she was a nice lady. She's one of the good ones, I guess, if they exist. And she said to my mother, she said, your son was in school and he kept getting up and sitting down, getting up and sitting down, and he was walking around the classroom. So she said, so I decided I was going to embarrass him. And so she said, I kept teaching and just ignored him and let him do whatever he's going to do. And then she said, I was going to embarrass him by asking him to repeat back what I had just taught everybody. And she goes, and you know what happened? He repeated back every single thing that I had just covered. And so what she said to my mother, which I appreciate, what she said to her, she said, your son is smart, but he's going to have trouble in the school system. Raise your hand in the chat if you have a son that maybe fits the description, because a lot of us fit the description. And what this white lady told my mama, which God bless her for you know, schooling her on this, she said, they're going to try to put him on medication. She said, do not let them do that. There's nothing wrong with him. He just has a lot of energy. And they're going to try to maybe put him in special ed and all these other things that they do to black boys. So fast forward, you know, when I was in school, I didn't know all this was happening. You know, a lot of times our whole future is being shaped and we're not even a part of that process, you know, because we're children, right? I'm 8 years old. The whole time my mother told me about all these conversations that she had and fights she had with teachers that would try to do that, you know, medication, special ed or whatever. And she was like, no, she's like, I will fight you. I will take your job. You're going to get hell from me. And a lot of times they left me alone just because they knew that my parents were present and going to be ferocious. They weren't going to passively allow things. So I think that the bottom line, the moral of the story for me, maybe this is the wrong conclusion, but the conclusion I came to is don't be trusting those white people with your damn kids. Seriously, like that's it. Like don't just be like, here, massa, takes my baby, and good luck. I hope you do something good with my baby. Don't do that. You know, you can if you allow them, if you give them the honor and the opportunity to educate your children, then you watch them. You watch them the way you watch a babysitter that might be a child molester. Like you got to eagle eyes all the time. You know, and if it wasn't for those eagle eyes, there's no way I'd be sitting here talking to you all right now. No way. I would have been a professor, none of this stuff, if I hadn't had advocates to protect me when I could not protect myself. So at the very least, I hope we can agree. Say something in the chat. Say yes if you agree. We all agree. We solemnly pledge right now we're going to protect our kids. We must protect our children. So I'm going to go back to Amani. I want to ask Amani about the homeschool process. I don't know if you're able to unmute yourself, Amani. I'll let you try, and if you can't try, I can try. What have you found? You've been homeschooling for a long time. Your son's 15, so you've been doing it, you said, for a decade. What do you think is one of the hardest things about, you know, the homeschool process, you know, for you as a mom?
Well, I just want to make it so let y'all know that I'm a single parent too. So I definitely understand the challenges that were just mentioned and that was mentioned in the video as well. I have 3 children. So my son is 15, my daughter is 13, and I have a 8-year-old. 8. So the challenges, was first, of course, as a single parent, you have to bring in income. So that was the problem. That was one of the challenges. How was I going to continue homeschooling? Because at first I started out as a housewife, and then I went, became a single parent when they were younger. So at the time, my children were like 4 and 5. And so I was trying to figure out how would I maintain the house and the children and their education and still, be able to, to just live. And so that all worked itself out because I just work from home. But as far as the educational journey with the children is that at first I started out, thinking I was going to homeschool my oldest 2 together and they were going to learn together. And then I realized that there's different learning styles and that wasn't going to work. So I had to open up to the idea of having to try different curriculums and different learning strategies for each child. So that was one of the challenges that I had. And then as the younger one came in, there was a big gap. So I had to figure out how was I going to teach the other 2. And then the youngest one, she had to learn her basic and they already knew their basics. So they were in, there was this a 7-year gap. So how was I going to manage that and still, provide for the children, take care of the house, things like that. So those are some of the challenges that I experienced. And I also have a child that's dyslexic. So when I started teaching her how to read, it started out, well, she would read. I thought she was reading. So she would I'd give her a book and she would start reading. And she was really creative. I mean, she just created the story and I thought she was reading, the words, but she wasn't. So I ended up having to do a lot of research on how she learns. And so that was another change. So then I realized that, okay, so now I have to really approach homeschool in more of a child-led environment. So my children lead our homeschool now. So it used to be ultra structured. Now it's just, whatever works for them, whatever they're interested in, I cater towards that. My son, he's into YouTubing. I said, what do you want to be? He's like, I want to be a YouTuber. And at first I was like, oh man, what does that mean? And of course, boys, I see you do your thing. And I'm like, oh man, what does this mean? So I said, okay, let me teach him business. And now I'm going to teach him marketing advertising because he seems to keep up on trends. Like he literally he researches trends, social media trends, all that. He knows this stuff. And so he's going to be focusing on marketing advertisement and still do his YouTube and Twitch account, whatever he does online. And my daughter, she's an artist. So we do a lot of different, art courses and things outside, different art camps and anything art related, I let her do. So basically the journey for anyone, I think, or the advice for anyone that wants to homeschool or is homeschooling is just allow your child to lead you, I think we get kind of caught up in the whole idea of schooling. And we forget that, this is a whole person. That's what I was saying before is that part of homeschooling was I wanted to teach them life skills. I wanted my daughters to know how to cook and be a good wife. My son to be, a great man, which is not something I can teach, by the way. So I have, mentors and his father and so many different people around to help guide him in that area. But so that's why I didn't feel the need to put it. I'm the type of person that if I don't like something I see, I'm not going to try to change it. So I didn't like the system. So I throw away the system and create a new one. I'm not going to argue with you. I'm not going to go back and forth with you. I'm not that. My mom did that. My mom actually sat in class with my brother and she realized that the teacher was racist, but she sat in the class with my brother and she was that type of person. I'm not. I'm like, I don't like it, throw it away. Like, build something new. That's me, 100%.
I love it. I love it. Well, I'll tell you what, I think that's, I like that mindset. The idea of building something new. I mean, and that's really something that, I think that in that sentence, you kind of defined, this whole space in one sentence. It's like, okay, let's build the world that we want to see. And the other thought that went through my mind when you were talking was, you were talking about letting the child lead you. And I like that a lot. You mentioned, or you made me think about this white kid actually that I knew that was homeschooled, and his parents were like hippies. And so they really didn't have any structure for his homeschooling. They just said, look, as long as you're shoving information in your brain, we'll teach you how life works so you can go out and do what you got to do. So the guidelines he had were, you had to study some subject every month. Pick a subject, read books about it. And at the end of the week, you had to write a report about whatever you were studying that week. And then you also had to write one report about somebody that inspires you. And so when this kid so he would study weird things. He would study, witchcraft. One time, maybe he studied, I don't know, dolphins or football or whatever. And his parents were like, okay, well, we don't know if this is going to work. Well, when the kid got about 15, he became obsessed with, Harry Potter. And so he took his passion for Harry Potter and he created this Harry Potter website. And this website ended up becoming the second most trafficked Harry Potter website on earth. So this kid was making like, $250,000 a month at 15 or 16 years old. And I met him and he was about 28, 29, 30, or maybe between 27 and 30 when I met him. He didn't seem too weird, weird at all, actually. But maybe if he was weird, it's probably because he was a millionaire in his 20s. And he was doing perfectly fine. In fact, he was actually smarter than most of the college graduates that I used to teach. When I would teach grad students, he just understood things, because there was kind of this thing where it's like, I learned not because I'm trying to pass a test. I learned because I want to understand my environment. I want to figure out where the opportunities are. I want to figure out how to achieve a specific goal, as opposed to I just passed a bunch of requirements and got a piece of paper that says that I'm smart. One thing I want to mention to everybody, just in case you guys just came in, some of you are asking this question. The recording of Black Movie Night, since we were over capacity and everybody couldn't get in, the recording, I'm going to put the link to the recording at blackmovienight.net. So at blackmovienight.net, anybody that misses this will either see the recording on the YouTube channel, Dr. Boyce TV, or they can go to blackmovienight.net. And I think we'll just record all the Black Movie Nights and put them up there. Also, I want to mention a couple things. Roosevelt's curriculum are called Raising a Black Scholar. You can find it at raisingascholar.com. If you're homeschooling your kids, this is a great curriculum to help you get it done. He's got it right there. Raisingascholar.com. Powernomics.com is another resource we recommend. Noma Langa has a guide. I'm going to ask you about that in a second, Noma. She actually documented her journey of going from, going to work every day to homeschooling her kids and that process. And that website, tell me if I get it right, Noma Langa, it's theblackHomeschoolGuide.com, right? THE? That's correct. theblackHomeschoolGuide.com. So somebody type that in the chat, please. theblackHomeschoolGuide.com, theblackHomeschoolGuide.com. And Tiara, your website, is it therealnetwork.net, or which website would you like to share? Just, I want to make sure we get this out. You're muted.
Sorry. Yes, we are at therealnetwork.net. We are what's real in Black Hollywood.
All right.
That's REEL.
There we go.
Like a movie reel.
Yep, like a movie reel. Therealnetwork.net. And Tiara, and Tiara's gonna be back pretty soon anyway, so y'all gonna see her way too much. So Noma Langa, let me ask you this question. Tell us about your transition. You were not homeschooling your kids, and the what I like about your story is that it's almost like you got called to battle in a way. Like you weren't looking for, this fight or this challenge, but it came to you, it landed in your lap, and you didn't back down from it. A lot of parents back down. A lot of parents get scared, etc. You didn't do that. You actually fought back. Tell us about that transition and what that was like, and what sort of drove you as you were going through that process.
Sure. You were asking Amani what was, the biggest challenge that she had or that homeschool parents might have when they transition to homeschooling. I actually found that one of the things that I was battling was my own mindset and my own idea about educating children, because I did kind of feel very, very nervous and actually very insecure. And I think that a lot of parents don't realize that that's normal. I actually have a master's in teaching. So it should come easier to me, right? But at this point, I also realized that I didn't have a master's in teaching small children. I had a master's and I was teaching at the college level. And those are two different worlds. Because those children are more or less on their own and they have the fundamentals already laid out by the time, hopefully, by the time they come to us as lecturers or professors in the college level. So in this instance, you're really taking on almost everything. You know, my youngest child couldn't really read when he entered our quote unquote homeschool out of preschool. And he took a really, really long time to read. And I couldn't figure out why. But again, the benefit of homeschooling is that you don't have to do it the traditional way. By the time he was in the 3rd grade, he was doing 4th grade math, but was doing 2nd grade reading. So you just kind of accommodate your children as they go along. So again, the biggest hurdle had to be in my own mind and just letting go of how I think it should be. They don't have to go from grade 1 to grade 2. If I had to measure now, you might find that our youngest, now he's only 4, but he's already started reading, but his brother didn't start reading until he was 7. So you can't just apply what, you know, that rigid system that you find at school, because that's the whole point of homeschooling, is you can relax a little bit and do things differently. And like Amani said, follow the children. My children loved gaming and they had a whole gaming website. They learned coding so they could create their own games. None of that exists in the public school system. And the whole idea of doing the gaming was so that they could make their own money. So again, it's about just throwing away what you think it should be and just focusing on the fundamentals, which are reading, writing, and we call it arithmetic. So it's the 3 R's: reading, writing, and arithmetic. And as long as you have those 3 foundations laid out, we added a 4th one, which was reasoning. So they had to learn critical thinking, logic and critical thinking. And with those 4 things, like right now, my daughter, who's only 13, just about to be 14, she can take a whole college level course on her own online because she knows how to read and she knows how to do math and she knows how to reason. And we often think that you have to finish high school or do all these other things before you can get there, but actually you don't. You just have to be able to read and write and reason for the most part. So that's one of the things that I would really advise, is just kind of relax a little bit in terms of compared to the school system, but also don't relax so much that you're missing the fundamentals. So make sure the fundamentals are somehow woven into the learning system. And then after that, have fun. You know, I heard Amani saying she wants her daughters to be great wives and mothers, and those are kind of the things that we threw out in, you know, after the 50s. But those are things that we're realizing now are things that are important and that we need. And the same thing goes with our boys. Their father shouldn't be the only person in their lives. You can encourage them to also interact with other men and get mentorship and get ideas about manhood and what it means. Because when you're Black in America, you need all the help that you can get about how to navigate society. It really is true. You need all the help that you can get if you're a Black boy about how you can navigate and survive and then eventually thrive in American society.
Well, you know, I love that point, and I'll say this. While Nomalanga was speaking, I saw one of you mention that you'd like to have some resources available for the parents that are homeschooling. Say a yes in the chat if you're at least going to consider, if you've at least thought about homeschooling your kids. You're homeschooling them now. So everybody who's doing something to educate your kids, type a yes in the chat. Everybody in here is homeschooling your kids. If you're not homeschooling, your kids ain't learning nothing except for what maybe they're learning from Nicki Minaj lyrics or something, but they ain't learning what they need to know. So given that you're in this situation now, given that we're all in the same boat, you know, we're all in the same situation, we're all fighting through the same obstacles of not just white supremacy, but now we've got what was probably going to amount to an unemployment rate that exceeds the Great Depression. We're heading into a massive economic collapse that's already begun. 10 million people have lost their jobs. I think this is the opportunity and the scenario where we make a transition. I think that those of you who are willing and ready to just take over the educational process from your, you know, in term when it comes to your own children, we want to help you with that. So one of the things I'm thinking we can do, Nomalanga, maybe on the blackhomeschoolguide.com, we can have a list of free resources that people can use to homeschool their kids. I think that's something easy that we could do. So her website is theblackhomeschoolguide.com. And also at raisingascholar.com, maybe Roosevelt, you can put some resources as well. And so that way we can help each other out. I know one thing for sure, the Black Business School, we're going to gather some people that are homeschooling experts or homeschooling parents and have homeschool networks. And you can't tell me that a group of smart Black people, if we all get together, we can't educate our own damn kids. In fact, it's an insult to think that they can educate our kids and we can't. Seriously. I mean, if you think that they can educate our kids and that we can't, then you're white supremacist. That's white supremacy, when you think they can do things that we can't do. So ain't no white supremacy in the building. So everybody who agrees, say I agree in the chat, that we're going to work through this thing together, and you will. And I want y'all to hold me accountable, because I'm going to step forward and use this platform to lay out, some spaces free of charge where you guys can come in and get what you need, and you don't have to do it by yourself. You ain't got to be scared. We're all going to escape the plantation together, so that Massa ain't going to come kill us one at a time. He's going to have to fight us all, right? So we all escaping the plantation as a group, not individually. So don't worry, we'll guide you to the North Star. So so as we close out, I'd like to ask everybody if you could maybe in 60 to 90 seconds, kind of give us a closing statement on just your final thought, as well as what your plans are moving forward. I think everybody would like to hear that, and definitely mention how people can get in touch with you, just in case for the folks that didn't get it the first time. Tiara, we'll start with you, ma'am.
Sure. So overall, I just want to say I'm so grateful to you boys and to everyone who participated in the film. No Malanga, Roosevelt, thank you for, taking the lead on this. I'm so inspired by the people that have watched, and I'm inspired that you're inspired. Obviously, that makes me want to keep making films. And speaking of making films, I am at this point I'm working on a love project with Dr. Voice. And I'm also writing scripts. So that's what I'm doing going forward. If you are interested in getting in touch with me, I'm at Miss Black Hollywood, MSBLACK Hollywood, on all social media platforms. Hit me up.
All right, so at Miss Black Hollywood on all social media platforms, that's how people can get in touch with you. Because
yes.
I know that you're working on a lot of film projects, so I think that's really good for those out there that are, fellow filmmakers, actors, actresses, things like that. And I told you guys, we're doing this because we are going to create a Black film industry. This is not a if. We're doing the damn thing. This is not something we're going to try to do, something we think we might do, or something that we're going to attempt to do. This is something that we're doing now, and we're going to continue to do it just at higher levels. So next, Roosevelt, Mr. Mitchell, I'd like to ask you, what are your final thoughts, and how can people get in touch with you?
My final thoughts, well, you can get in touch with me. RaisingAScholar.com is only that product, but also Instagram, I'm at the Disability Scholar, or Roosevelt Mitchell III on Facebook. But my final thoughts is I believe that everyone, even if you can't homeschool full time, you at least should be teaching something at home supplemental. And again, in that guide, like I listed out to where it's apps and stuff in there that our kids already know how to use the phone to get on TikTok and make videos and all that. We might as well teach them how to use it to be productive and to find free money apps and stuff like that in order for them to learn financial literacy. Because again, we live in a capitalistic society, and for our kids not to know about money in this society is just about criminal, in which they don't teach them at school, right? So again, and my next projects is, I'm all about education stuff. So I created the Raising Black Scholar for supplemental curriculum for the home. I also have, for the parents who have their kids inside school, the Parent Advocacy Bible, so you can advocate for your child and get whatever you need to get. I
have one of those in the other room, actually. It's
yeah.
I want to endorse that, y'all. This brother's good. His stuff is very good. Go ahead, man. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, the next we're creating some books for teachers for about mental health. Again, there's so many teachers that are mentally depressed or burnt out trying to teach your kids that nothing about, and that's why the energy is bad. They constantly send them out of the classroom and stuff like that. So there's a lot of stuff going on that it's a teaching deficit that's going on in which your child can learn too, that I'm trying to fix. And again, I've dedicated my entire career on going, teaching in the school districts with 90 to 100% African American kids. I've taught in East St. Louis. I've taught at the school Michael Brown used to go to in Normandy. Like I've taught in all these different places. So yeah, that's about all I'm doing.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And Miss Amani, what are your parting thoughts? Is there a way people can get in touch with you? Did Amani freeze? It looks like her screen might have frozen. Hey, Amani, can you hear us? Her screen froze in a way. It almost looks like she. Oh, there we go. Yeah. Hey, Amani, can you hear us?
Oh, that was on my end. I was like, boys, you're gone.
Yeah. And your eyes were shut. I thought you fell asleep. But go ahead. If anybody has a right to fall asleep, it's No Malanga, because I think in Botswana right now, it's what, about 2 a.m., 2:30? Is that right? It's 4 a.m. Look at that. Okay. All right. Well, shout out to you. All right. So, Amani, any parting thoughts? How can people reach out if they have any questions or anything like that? What do you think?
Well, thank you for allowing me to be on the movie night.
Uh-oh. Looks like Amani. Hey, Amani, looks like you froze. So I'm gonna let No Malanga close us out here. But I can bring you back in, and if you have contact information, I'll make sure I share it, okay? Because it looks like the Wi-Fi is kind of shutting down a little bit, okay? Yeah. If you want to, you can even type in your information into the chat, and I can make sure everybody gets that, okay? Okay, so No Malanga, let's finish up with you. Where can people get in touch with you, and what are your parting thoughts?
My parting thought is just that I want to encourage parents to know that they can trust themselves. I often hear people say, well, what makes you think you're qualified to teach your children? But the truth is, even somebody who's not necessarily highly educated or educated at all can teach their child. You can't teach them necessarily, but you can be the guide or the person who's pushing them towards the education system. As long as you're dedicated and you're committed, which I've yet to meet a parent in our community who isn't, you'll do well. So you have to trust yourself and just find the resources to supplement your child's education if you're their primary teacher. As you said, I have an introductory guide of how to transition from the public school system into your own homeschool family school, and that is theblackhomeschoolguide.com. And also you can always find me on Facebook. I'm under my name, No Malanga. I'm Charlie Moses. I'm a real Facebooker. I'm always on Facebook. So you can find me there. You can follow. I have over 1,000 people waiting for friend requests. So it's better to follow and we can interact. So thank you.
All right. So that's theblackhomeschoolguide.com. So go check that out. And also, Noma, maybe after we can talk about the free resources you can put up there for everybody that's here. And everybody here, as you came in, what we'll do is we'll email you out information about our homeschool gatherings, things like that. You guys see me online, pretty much every day. But what I'll do is I will lend my platform to individuals and educators that have something they can share that's going to get this done. And so we collect resources, we educate our kids, we take over the process. That's how we get it done. That's how we make it happen. So I want to say thank you very much. I hope you all would take a second and give a digital round of applause for all of our panelists and tell them thank you so much. Thank you very much to all of you for your time. And Noma, I know you all the way over in Botswana, and by the way, if you haven't visited Botswana, it's a very beautiful country. It's an amazing place, and so also just as reminders, Roosevelt's curriculums are at raisingascholar.com. Tierra's URL is therealnetwork.net, therealnetwork.net, REEL, not REAL, REEL. The Black Homeschool Guide, THE, theblackhomeschoolguide.com. That's No Malanga's place. Amani, now Amani didn't give a URL. Did you have a URL, email, or anything you wanted, or contact information?
I posted it in chat. You can reach me on Facebook under Amani Walker,
okay.
As well as I have a another page. It's called Green Crop City. Green Crop City, and that's on Instagram and Facebook, and that's Green Crop, like plant, crop, CROP, City, and I'm on Instagram and I'm on Facebook, and you can reach me there.
All right, that's Green Crop City on Instagram and Facebook. And once again, you guys know I'm definitely partial to Powernomics. Dr. Claude Anderson was on today giving you the history of how the education system was designed to actually destroy our kids. He's got documentation and receipts on that. Of course, they're never going to teach that in school because they don't want you to know what's really going on. And we're here to just make sure you have full information so you can arm your children and prepare them, you know, for the struggle that's coming. And I can tell you guys this, just as we close out here, you know, you're walking right into a not just a recession, but a depression, and not just a depression, but what could be the worst depression in the history of this country. And so one of the things about human nature is that people change when times get tough. You know, you think white folks are mean to you now, just wait until they start getting hungry and can't feed their own kids and can't find jobs and don't have the money to pay the rent. That's when people really start fighting for scarce resources. And that's when you have to find ways to stick together and work together. So, so this homeschool project is just one of many projects that I want to throw out to you guys in terms of giving us all options that will allow us to find ways to stick together, to fight through all of this. And I'm going to research my butt off to see what I can find that will help you in your situation. I want you guys to know that we're definitely thinking about you. We're praying for all of you. And we're going to keep doing Black movie nights because we're still going to build this industry. Hollywood, a big chunk of Hollywood was built right through the Great Depression. So no matter what's coming, we know that Black people are the most resilient people in the history of this planet. We survived Middle Passage and mass incarceration and 400 years of slavery. We can survive whatever's coming next. So thank you all for hanging out with us for Black Movie Night. You can subscribe, sign up for the next one at blackmovienight.net. We're going to keep on doing this because we are winning, because Black people are winning, and because we are the greatest, we are the best. And so thank you very much again to the panelists, and thank you all for hanging out. And until we see each other again, God bless everybody. Bye-bye now.
Here we are, clan the isms, cataclysm, great. Our people out here struggling, trying to make it in this state. Everybody out here doing it, but we the ones who late. Now family, we the ones who gotta delegate. Get that money in the power, never be fake. Stick to cosign for 3. What did he say? Create jobs, support our own. Educate the same and buy back your home. Got 3 degrees, triple 10. 3 PhDs, now we on the CNN. DBTV, let's talk about negligence. Ignorance is bliss, but we can turn it to intelligence. Believe none of what you hear, half of what you see. Let's break it down here on Dr. Boy's TV. Here we are.